Hey, you're listening to Blindsight. Let's go. Mental health isn't something to take lightly. It's time to fight. It's time to thrive. Let's do this.
Hi there. Welcome to Blindsight. This is your host, Bill Lundgren, and I'm delighted to have you here listening in today. And I have today also our producer, Jonathan Price. He and I are going to talk about one of the subjects that may seem strange to some people in talking about mental health, but it's done for a reason which I'll explain, and that is talking about dogs, and actually pets in general, but the way that dogs can help the mental health of his or her owner. And so, Jonathan, without further ado, welcome. Glad to have you with me today.
Thanks, Bill. It's awesome to be here.
Yeah.
Love it.
Yeah, you love it. It's been a busy day for you, so this will be fun.
Yes, it's a good way to end my day.
Yep, you got it. You got it. Well, what sort of made me thinking about dogs and so forth? I, of course, have had guide dogs for 30 years. And in fact, when one time when I came down here to Denver and went to the training center, at the end, I didn't have a dog for a whole lot of reasons I won't explain, but I was without a dog, learning how to use the white cane and so forth.
Yep.
And at the end of it, my travel instructor said, "You know, Bill, I think you need a dog."
Yep.
One of the things about the white cane is if I forget where I put it, it's not going to come running to me. You know, I can tell the dog, come here, and he'll come running over.
That's right. Although you don't have to take it out. You don't have to take it for walks. So.
Well, yeah, but you know, that's the other piece of it. I think you don't have to take the white cane out, but you know what? We need to get our butts outside.
That's right.
We need to go be with nature. I've mentioned several times that there are mental health institutes in Scandinavia where, as part of their program, the instructors take them for hikes in the wood. And we just had Michael talking about who's doing therapy with men in the woods and how therapeutic that is.
Yeah.
And having a dog, yes, I have to take Aiden out 4 times a day. But you know what? It gets me outdoors. I happen to live on a park, which is a big benefit, but anytime I can get outdoors instead of being in my study is good for me. It's good for my mental health.
Yeah.
And also with the dog, a guide dog, I can do a lot of things and go places that I just wouldn't feel comfortable going with a white cane.
Sure.
It just doesn't cut it for me. Right. Now, for other people, it's fine. But in general, I think one of the things that's real worthwhile for people to consider, particularly if they live alone or they just don't have someone around who can go with them places or want that independence, having a pet, having a dog can do so much for your psyche.
Yeah.
And, it's whether it's a guide dog or any kind of pet, it gets you out of yourself. And there's nothing certainly that gets my mood going when, my dog comes running up, is all happy. I may be in a bad mood and he's wanting to be petted and wants to pay attention to me. And so it changes the atmosphere.
It's funny how it does that, huh?
Yeah, absolutely. And in fact, I know a therapist who has told me that when she's working with someone with blindness and has a guide dog, she, the therapist, will check the guide dog, what kind of mood the guide dog is in, to get a better reading about her patient than her patient is able to tell her.
Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah, it's a very and the dog, her reading of the dog is proven time and time again to be absolutely accurate. And the
Wow.
patient comes around and kind of, yeah, that's true, and may
Wow.
not have been willing to admit it to the therapist unless the dog sort of rats on her.
Yep.
But the that's one aspect of it. But the other aspect is just when we take care of something else, we are in many ways taking care of ourselves, but we're getting out of ourselves in order to do it, if that makes sense.
Yeah. It's like, when you have to focus on something else other than yourself,
Right.
there's something happens in your brain. Like when I have to take care of my kids and I need to put their needs before mine. Yes, it is more draining and it can be more exhausting sometimes, but sometimes that's the best medicine. And even sometimes the best medicine is just sitting down next to them and cuddling up and watching a TV show. And it may not even have to do anything, but just that quality time with that person or that pet is enough to get your brain going.
Children and dogs give you feedback.
Yes.
And they kind of, they can affirm you just by being, like you talked about your son bringing you a cinnamon toast when
I know.
were so busy.
Yeah.
Boy, that did the world for your head, I'm sure.
Oh, yeah. It did. Yep. Yeah. And it's little things like that, when your kids are apt enough to pay attention to even your needs. Now, there's going to be some times that they're going to say things that will be like, wow, I wish you hadn't have said that because I really feel like garbage right now. But they're kids and it's kind of what they do. It's kind of fun. And I don't want to get too far off into kids, but when you have those relational things that, especially with dogs or a service animal or a pet of some nature, you have that release of the oxytocin. You have that bonding chemical and that hormone that gets released and the dopamine from that helps bond you two together. Exactly.
And I haven't this year taken a lot of time to go hiking. And of course, when Aftersight had that hike, I of course felt, I wanted to go. And of course, I felt obligated to go, but I was doing, what I really wanted to do, and especially to get him out in the woods, see how he does. Well, it was a hike that some people were with me, and they were kind of giving him instructions, and I could feel he just wasn't feeling quite sure that he was doing the right thing.
Mm-hmm.
Then a couple of days later, I went with just one friend, and my friend did not give, he only once gave Aiden some instruction, and he told me that my previous dog, when he tried to do the same thing as my friend was doing, the dog scowled at him. And basically, by his body language, says, I know what I'm doing. Just back off. And so with Aiden, we went the whole hike.
Yep.
Didn't give any instructions, except one time, dogs apparently don't have depth perception because, their eyes are in the side of their head.
Yeah.
And sometimes when you're walking in a city street and you have a newspaper box right at the end of the street, and behind it is the building that's at the corner, they get a little confused because they see it as one unit rather than as two until they have a chance to look around. And this one part, there were two rocks close together, but it looked like one big rock. And he was kind of confused as to what he should do at that point. He looked up at us And Dan said, go ahead. There's space there. And he went through, took me right through, no
Nice.
problem
Good.
whatsoever.
Yep.
And that's something I couldn't have been able to do.
Right.
And on the hike, I had no trouble. I didn't trip or anything. He was just great. So that gives me the confidence to be able to get out and do things. And the same thing, I think, for him. He was smiling the whole trip, the second trip, because he knew he was in charge.
Yep.
And that feeling and that bonding is what makes a big difference. What an animal can do for you is having that bonding and knowing that you're okay because you've got somebody who's watching over you.
Yeah.
And also doesn't talk back at you.
That's yeah.
Or ask for the car at
That's right. That's right. Although I will say this, it was funny seeing Aiden come down the hill after that hike because he was so quote unquote dog tired that anytime you stopped, he was on his belly, ready to leave. I'm done with this. What are we doing? It was funny.
He was out of shape, but after the second hike, he's been looking at me like, Daddy, when are we going hiking again?
Yep.
So I have to line up some trips. But you see, I believe in using whatever is available to help us feel mentally healthy. And I think one of the things that's real helpful is it doesn't require a prescription or anything, is to have a pet that you're taking care of, that's dependent on you in some ways, and also very helpful for you. Mm-hmm. And that does so much for our psyche. And that's why, hospitals are using therapy dogs. That's why one of the things they're doing in prisons now is they're having inmates taking care of animals and training animals.
Yeah.
And training guide dogs, because getting people to focus on this creature does so much therapeutically for people. And for someone who and I've had some argument. Well, I won't call them arguments. I don't get into a battle about it. But there are people that I've met in meetings of people with blindness who think, having a dog is ridiculous. I'm not going to be bothered with a dog. They're too much trouble. And for me, it's too much trouble not to have a dog.
Yeah.
And to be able, and at night, I hope that seeing eye is not listening in. They tell us not to have our dog sleep with us, but I'm sorry. He waits until I get in bed, then he hops in and makes himself comfortable.
That's right.
I have a little trouble because he doesn't leave me a whole lot of room. But it is that comforting. It's comforting, which is, I think, in many ways very helpful for us. Particularly, I think of older people who have developed macular degeneration and so forth. What often happens is they'll retreat because to try to learn how to, get out with blindness, they just figure it's easier just to hang around at home. And yet that's exactly what I frankly think they should not be doing.
Yeah.
And having a dog or having a pet that you're taking care of helps you to get your mind back in sync with the world. And,
well, there's also there's also a familiarity and comfort to knowing that when you get home, somebody is waiting for you.
Yep, exactly.
And it's not just the taking care of aspect, the relational aspect. I know when I went through my divorce and through a lot of other things in the last year, that even though he's not a guide dog, he's just a pet, but he helped me immensely,
Right.
and I didn't even realize it at times. And there were some very dark days in there, obviously, but the ability for him they do, but the ability for him to carry that burden without really any, they just want to play, they just want to throw the ball, run around, chase squirrels, and they're like men. We're very simple creatures. We just want to go play. And
they want to go play, but I think in many ways they know instinctively you need to play.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
You need something. They can pick up our moods.
You need to go for a walk.
And we want to go for a walk, or it just, we're sitting there and we're feeling bad, and the dog comes over and put his paw on our leg and looks up at us. And, it's real hard to feel bad when who's got that unconditional acceptance.
Yeah.
And it doesn't have to be a dog. It can be any animal that has that kind of instinct. A cat can do that for people and begin to help people feel much better about themselves. And that's why it's easy to get an animal. We have lots of rescue places. You have to be careful in terms of trying to find out as much history to get a dog that is able to be to reach out to you and to be there for you, because some have really been badly abused. But even the ones that are abused, it takes a little more work to form a connection.
Yes.
But they want it as much as you do.
That's right. They do. I know Logan, my dog was an abused dog, and now he came from a family who loved him very much, but it still took him a little while to get used to me and our way of life. But, within a matter of a day, 2 days, he was bonded, and now, he's sitting right next to me under my feet and just kind of hanging out. And he's an 85-year-old, 85-pound dog.
Wow.
He's old. Oh, man. No, but
is that in dog life, or is that in
that's
human
right.
life?
Yeah. No, he's a 3-year-old, but he's a big dog, but he just loves to cuddle and play, and it's
so
very
comforting.
good. Yeah.
Yeah, and of course, us men, we don't want to admit that we need comforting. We're trained not to ask for that, but the dog gives it, doesn't care. The dog just gives it, without any hesitation. And again, particularly for people who are struggling with depression, struggling with anxiety, struggling with getting used to having blindness or whatever it is, the dog just doesn't care.
Yeah.
He or she cares about you.
Yep.
And that's, it's sometimes that's more than you can expect from humans.
Mm-hmm.
But and as I say, it doesn't have to be a dog, a cat. When you're caring for something and that creature returns the favor to you, then that is meaningful and therapeutic.
Yeah.
Now, the advantage that people have with guide dogs, of course, that we can take a guide dog any place.
Yeah.
And we have to have, proof of being a guide dog. I knew a friend of mine worked for one of the airlines in customer service, and she got a call from a steward on an airplane. He said that someone was coming on the plane with 21 dogs.
Oh my goodness!
And she was claiming that these were her comfort dogs.
Whoa!
Now the flight was leaving from a city where there was a major dog show in the area,
Yeah.
So the people were a little bit skeptical about what she said. And of course, my friend said, no, this is a scam in essence. And now airlines have cracked down. They're not accepting comfort dogs anymore.
Wow.
They're not accepting anything. In fact, the regulations are just for service dogs. If you bring in a service peacock, that's not going to,
Right.
pardon the pun, won't
That's
fly.
Right.
But they can go anywhere. And in fact, in most certainly European countries, but most countries allows you to bring the service animal with you, service dog with you, which is a real, some bar them because of they're afraid, the farmers are afraid they might bring in infection. But for the most part, you can take your service dog, but it has to be a service dog. It has to be someone who's working with, and I'm not real clear whether we're doing that for also blocking dogs that can sense when someone is having an epileptic fit.
Yep.
And can let and warn people, give a warning when a fit is coming on. That's medical. But I think there's some question in my mind about that, whether they're allowed the same thing as the guide dogs are. But for the most part, having a guide dog is actually, because it's a medical necessity, you can take the expenses of the dog off your taxes.
Yeah.
But more than that, it's the question really of being able to get around. And I think for me, as my travel instructor said, a dog works for me much better. Part of it being, of course, my hearing. And so that I'm trained, the dog works with me in all those areas. And they also, I think the school knows me well enough that where I get my dogs, that they also check the dog out for hiking.
Gotcha. Yep.
And, and then again, I wouldn't hike unless I had a dog who can really follow. And, we, on that trip, on your hike, there were deer.
Yeah.
And the deer, my dog doesn't look at deer or squirrels or whatever when he's on duty. So it makes a big difference. But I think therapeutically, in terms of having that comfort, that creature that cares about you and gets you out of not only your funk, but also gets you out of the place where you live, is part of mental health, in my mind. There's the third aspect I've got to, I sort of mentioned it, but I want to highlight it too. A lot of people don't understand, whether it's a guide dog or any kind of service dog, the ability that the dog has to take care of you. And they intervene or they violate all the rules. And you have to be, and one of the things you have to learn particularly when you have a guide dog, is how to let people know that certain behavior, like trying to feed the dog or petting the dog, is not acceptable.
That's hard.
Because this is a working dog. Now, what I've seen, and being somebody who has a guide dog, yell at somebody who does that. Mm-hmm. And I don't think that's really very helpful for anybody.
Yeah.
But one of the things that people may need to do is take a look at how they can let someone respectfully know that something is taboo.
Sure.
But not, get into a big fight with them. And then that's good training for us, in terms of relationships, and also in terms of helping people, other people who aren't familiar with guide dogs, what's the correct etiquette?
Well, I've seen even yesterday when I was in the airport, a beautiful husky was wearing a harness, and it had the I forget what it's called, but it has like the bar that goes across like the hand with
the harness, you mean?
Yeah, just a harness.
Yeah,
but it was
harness, yeah.
black, and it didn't really have any markings outside of some white lettering on the very back of it, and it wasn't super pronounced. It said service dog, and I knew what it was, but it wasn't very prominent as a service dog, harness. And so it is one of those education things where the public needs to understand what the protocol is,
right?
What a guide dog looks like, what their harness looks like, and to make sure that they're paying attention to all of those signs. The other thing that impresses me about service dogs is that you have not just, guide dogs, but we were talking very, very briefly and kind of referencing dogs who can tell any sort of medical condition, especially like seizures and strokes and things like that, to tell you to get on the floor, and they'll kind of help you out and those kinds of things. These animals are amazing. And
they are amazing.
I think we take them for granted more than we care to admit.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I remember one time, this is back in Philadelphia, and I just working with my dog, and I got a little confused as to where I was. And here's the dog with a very obvious harness standing next to me, and a woman came by, and I said, excuse me, is this Carpenter Street?
Yeah.
And she saw the dog and me, and she said, yes, it is. See the sign up there?
Oh, my gosh.
Yeah.
Sure. There you go. Here's your sign.
Yep.
Wow.
And I've had this happen more times than I care to admit. People are just totally oblivious. And you have to understand that is the situation.
Yeah.
And yelling at them really is not going to do anything.
No, it just makes you look like an idiot, and it makes you look insensitive.
Right. And then they can be angry at you and not pay attention to the lesson that you're trying to teach them.
Right. Yeah. Nobody likes to be taught a lesson. Now,
some guide dog schools are giving their graduates some cards that they can give out, but I'm not sure that that's, you can try it, but sometimes it's just telling them, point blank, in a gentle way that that's, or I say, I'm afraid I can't see the sign. I'm blind. And then they say, oops, then they apologize, which is nice. But, they really people need to pay attention. But it's one of the things that we're really talking about also. And I know that a lot of people are uncomfortable with this role. But you know what? We have, I think, an obligation to let's talk about the blindness community, but any physical disability. We have an obligation to whenever and I know this is exhausting, it is for me, to teach. Whenever the opportunity arises. Now, I have taught ushers and box office people in theaters on how to work with people who have guide dog users or who are blind. What do you say? How? And it is an education process.
Yeah.
And when you're in a situation like that lady, it's important for me to say, I'm blind and this is my guide dog, and he hadn't learned the streets yet.
Wow.
What I said. So I need to, resort to a sighted person, but thank you for telling me, where I was. And it's, Or there was one time I was walking down the street, and a father with his child was saying, "See, that dog can tell what color the light is and will tell him when to cross the street." And there was a moment where I said to myself, do I need to do an education here? Which I really did. But somehow I didn't want to interfere with
Right.
dad and son, because
Right.
the son was eating up everything daddy was saying.
That's, yeah.
And you know, at that moment you say, do
Yeah.
I turn around and try to educate everybody, or I just
let it go.
it?
Yeah, boy, if there were more people who could just let stuff go, we would be so much happier and just let them.
Yeah.
Sometimes, and you know what? I can almost guarantee you that there will be a day that dad is going to be engaged with someone who is blind, or his son is going to be learning about dogs on National Geographic, and he's going to learn the truth that, dogs really can't tell colors.
I was out just a little while ago. I fed him and took him out, and a woman came up, and we were talking about dogs, and and I said I was going to do a podcast on dogs and mental health care, and she said, her mother has an emotional support dog, and I told where, and then she asked me about the podcast, of course, and I didn't hesitate for a moment to do a selling job on it.
Yeah.
So we may have another listener, on this program. But the point is that we have to, one, those of us who have blindness need to have the right to be out in society. Those with any physical disability, we have a right to be out in society. And we also have the obligation to teach people as to what is appropriate to help us if we need any help at all. I've said on this program, people say to me, do you need help? And my response is, oh, I'm beyond help. And I do that to bring a little humor to it. And people then are ready to hear what I have to tell them.
Yeah.
About what I need or what I'm doing, or the fact that, yes, I'm a blind person, but because of this guide dog, I don't really need any help, but thank you. And in that way, we can make a dent. When I go into a doctor's office, and doctor, I don't know what happens, but the receptionist or the nurse or the practitioner grabbed me by the arm and to take me to the doctor's office.
Yep.
And I have to take them up. Hold on, let me take your elbow. And I do it as a teaching experience. And I said, when we go into the doorway, maybe not wide enough for all of us, so you move your arm behind your back, and then I will know to single file. And they're very grateful for that.
Oh, yeah.
Because they didn't know. All they knew was they had to get me from point A to point B.
Right.
But if we can do it graciously and put in some education, then hopefully the next time she sees someone who has a dog or is using a white cane, that he or she will know what to do.
Yeah.
And be and that can be very affirming for a patient when they're in a place where people know what to do.
Yeah.
And that helps everybody. Yep. But I know some people said, I'm tired of teaching people. Yeah, I know. That's one of the problems. But then again, when you have a success and somebody says, oh, I'm so glad you taught me this, or I'm so glad to learn this, then you say, okay, maybe it's tiring for me, but for the next person, it's going to be some kind of benefit.
That's right.
And that's what we can keep hoping for, to be out there to show that we're not the unhappy people that I think a lot of people think we are.
Oh, yeah. That's for sure.
And we in fact have contribute, and we can contribute in teaching people something they didn't know before. And they have an animal that, loves us and is able to do what is necessary to get us from point A to B.
Yep.
And to just be there. And, when I love it when I sit in the doctor's chair and Aiden just flops down and goes to sleep. He's not going to interfere in any way, shape, or form.
Right.
And I think people are impressed with that.
It's, yeah.
They probably
how many people do you
home and say, "Why don't you behave like that?"
That's right. Well, I see people walking their dogs all the time around my house, and the dogs are walking them. They're not walking their dogs, and they have, a lot of people will see that as a misconception, and that's just unfortunate. If you take the time to train your dog, and you have, obviously guide dogs come, pre-trained and helpful,
and to teach people that dogs can do more than they think they can.
Yeah.
If you let them, if you show them what you want them to do.
Yeah. Well, this has been fun, Bill. What are your final words?
For me. I loved, I admit, I love talking about my guide dogs and all the things they've done. And it's a great opportunity for me. And I hope it will encourage some people who've been thinking about it to, get yourself a dog.
Yeah.
The thing is, it doesn't cost anything.
We've got resources for, I think it's Leader Guide Dogs for the Blind. We also have, there's a couple of resources on our site. I forget which ones they are specifically, but if you need any information, you can give us a call at 720-712-8856 or email us at feedback@aftersight.org. And we'd love to hook you up and get you in contact with somebody who is very knowledgeable about having a guide dog. I think even Evan was considering getting a guide dog once upon a time. And, there are benefits and cons to having a guide dog. It just depends on what you want, where you are, where you're at in your life, and, guide dogs not necessarily are for everybody, but that doesn't mean you don't need a dog, or maybe you want a dog. You just don't need a guide dog, and there's, all sorts of situations for different things. So it's a unique road to walk down, and we hope that you're able to.
I'm so glad I
to
did.
do that.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. But that's for me. That's for me, not for everybody. Yeah, absolutely. Well, this has been another episode of Blind Sight. Been glad that you've been with us. Remember, feedback. Feedback by telephone is 720-712-8856 or feedback@aftersight.org and email any suggestions or somebody you think we should talk to, or you hated the program, we shouldn't talk so much about dogs. Well, we welcome any comment from people, because that lets us know that somebody's listening and really tuning into what we're doing. So this is Bill Lundgren and Jonathan Price signing off.